What's up, guys? Welcome to the video. Welcome back to another college basketball weekly recap. This week has been crazy. Probably one of the craziest weeks of college basketball in recent memory. I know this past Saturday, what was that? The 4th, February 4th was probably the wildest Saturday I've seen in 5, 6, 7 years. It was just insane. The matchups heading into that game, the upsets. I think 15 out of the top 25 teams lost. So 60% of the top 25 teams in the nation lost this past weekend. I'll start off with the best team and still the best team overall, even after a loss. The Purdue Boilermakers. They ended up beating Michigan State, a pretty good Michigan State team, about middle of the pack Big Ten team, last Sunday by double digits. And they beat a good Penn State team and then went to Bloomington, Indiana, to Assembly Hall to face the Hoosiers. And I know it's weird to say this, but I felt better after Purdue winning this game and lost than before the actual game happened. Purdue was picked to lose this game, surprisingly, in Indiana. And they actually did it, and they looked so good in that loss. They were down 15 at halftime. They allowed the Hoosiers to score 50 points. So it was 50-35 at halftime. And then Zach Edey just went crazy the first few minutes of the second half. Finished with 33 points and 18 rebounds. They got this game to a one-possession game in the final minutes. And Indiana pulled it off. Amazing win for Indiana. Obviously, biggest win of the season. Trayce Jackson-Davis is playing like a National Player of the Year candidate. Jalen Hood-Schifino is also playing great. Playmaking is just exceptional. So, huge day for Indiana. They're on track, and they are a scary team. They might get Xavier Johnson back, another point guard, another playmaker for them. And just matching the chemistry is the biggest question mark for me regarding them. But if they get it together, man, this team could be an Elite Eight team, a Final Four team. So, yeah, big things for Indiana. On the other side, Purdue, still, even after this loss, in my opinion, the number one team in the nation, the number one overall seed. This team they were so good. They were so good even in a loss. So their only two losses this season have been Indiana on Saturday and then Rutgers. But yeah, Purdue still looking bright, man. I expect huge things coming into the Big Ten tournament and especially the NCAA tournament. The Tennessee Volunteers got a huge win over the number 10 Texas Longhorns Saturday, January 28th. So not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before. And proceeded to follow up that huge win with a very, very, very disappointing loss to Florida, 67-54. Now, they were at Florida. Colin Castleton went off for Florida. And then on Saturday, they played a 25th ranked Auburn team. Tennessee did. They played a 25th ranked Auburn team, and let's face it, Auburn should not be ranked, in my opinion. Not a very good team under Bruce Pearl. Tennessee won probably one of the ugliest games of the year, 46-43. 46-43. Good gosh. So Tennessee got the win. They escaped, and they move on to play Vanderbilt, Missouri. Then February 15th, they have a meeting with Alabama. And that's going to be such a fun game. That's going to be such a fun game. 3 days after that, they play Kentucky. But man, that Alabama game, mark that on your calendars, man. It's going to be a great one. We'll really get to see what Tennessee and Alabama are really made of. And I can't wait. Another top 10 team that went down on Saturday were the Virginia Cavaliers, number 6 overall, and they ended up losing in a rivalry game to Virginia Tech. Now, Virginia had a pretty good week. They beat Syracuse in a pretty ugly game, but they pulled it out. That's all that matters, at Syracuse. And so they lost this game at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech scored 74. Another top 10 team that went down. Virginia is actually behind Clemson in the ACC, so that's really, really wild to see that Clemson is above Virginia. But yeah, not really too alarming for Virginia. They will get back in it, in my opinion. They have NC State the 7th, and then Duke right after that. Then they play Clemson at the end of February. So those will be 3 important games for them. Moving on to the Big 12, a team I could talk about for probably an hour, man. The Texas Longhorns. After everything with Chris Beard, Rodney Terry has stepped up and been a Coach of the Year candidate these past 2 months, man. He's got them playing at an exceptionally high level, and this team could beat anybody. They really can. He just got them bought in. Obviously, they're an older team, so it means a lot to have older players instead of younger players in a situation like this. What a stretch they had. Lost to Tennessee, 4th-ranked Tennessee, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before, like I mentioned earlier. Proceeded to beat the number 11 Baylor Bears 76-71 in a game where Sir'Jabari Rice had 21 points. Also, Timmy Allen pitched in 18. And then went into Kansas State and pulled out a 3-point win, 69-66, in a game where Christian Bishop poured in 14 points in the second half. He didn't have any points in the first half. This team was down 28-14 at one point when I turned it on. It was 28-14 Kansas State at Kansas State. And Texas came out in that second half and pulled it off. What a win for Texas. They don't get any medal for winning these past two games. They follow this up after at Kansas State. They play Kansas tonight on Monday. So, tough schedule. Like I said, the Big 12 is ridiculous this year. They also end February with this slate of games, these 4 games. They end February and start March with these 4 games. Iowa State at Texas. They go to Baylor. After that, they go to TCU. And then they are met with Kansas at home. So, man, you just never know in the Big 12. You never know. Texas is going to be pushed to the absolute limit. So far, they've pushed right back. They've won a majority of the games. They're still in first place of the Big 12, right in front of Iowa State. And, man, what a season for Texas. Just a heck of a season for Rodney Terry, what he's done for that program. And just a season that could have went up in flames after Chris Beard. But it didn't, and he's got them sitting at the top of the crazy Big 12 right now. So much respect for Rodney Terry and what he's done so far. On the other side, the Kansas State Wildcats, cannot believe they lost this game. Not a bad loss at all. Texas is a great team like I'm explaining right now. But, man, I cannot believe they lost this game. Such a big game on Saturday, allowing the Longhorns to come into their house. Jerome Tang, can't be happy about this one. But, man, you know, they've had a tough week. They played at Kansas on Tuesday night and then had to welcome Texas on Saturday. They also get TCU February 7th, so Tuesday tomorrow. So rough slate of games for them as well. But so they lost to Kansas. They allowed Kansas to put up 90 on them on Tuesday. And so this team will figure it out. They have a lot of things going for them, and I expect big things from Kansas State still. Staying right on in the amazing Big 12 Conference is the Iowa State Cyclones took on number 8 Kansas on Saturday at Iowa State. And man, this wasn't too much of a game. Kansas made it close every now and then, but Iowa State ended up winning 68-53. And man, they just rolled. Jaron Holmes scored all 15 of his points in the second half. And this team, Iowa State had a tough week, man. They had a huge win over Kansas State. I talked about that in my last video. Not this past Tuesday, but the Tuesday before. They ended up losing to Missouri, a bad loss on Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago in the SEC Big 12 matchup, losing by 17. And then they were up 23 at Texas Tech and lost by 3. They let O'Banner for Texas Tech score 24 and win the game for them. So that's an ugly loss. Missouri, not so much, but Texas Tech was an ugly loss, especially being up 23 in that game. And then they followed that up with a dominant performance over Kansas. So they're still, let's see, they are second in the Big 12 right now, right behind Texas. And the conference is just up for grabs, man. You never know. Otzelberger's still doing an amazing job. Coach of the Year candidate. Big 12 is full of Coach of the Year candidates. So, yeah, still expect big things from Iowa State. They have a huge stretch coming up against TCU, then at Kansas State, then at Oklahoma. They finished that up last game of the season against Baylor. So I still expect big things from this Iowa State team. I am very bullish on this team, but we'll see. The other side of that, the Kansas Jayhawks. Pretty disappointing loss here. Jalen Wilson, can we get him some help? It's like Luka. It's like Luka in the league right now, but Luka just got Kyrie. Can Grady Dick step up and help Jalen Wilson? I don't think so. He disappears sometimes. Jalen Wilson had 26 points. Kansas scored 53 points. So 50% of the points came from Jalen Wilson. They welcome the 5th-ranked Longhorns tonight at 8 o'clock, and what a game that'll be. I'm gonna have to stay up and watch it. I don't care about getting enough sleep for work. I got to stay up and watch that game. Huge game for the Big 12. So really excited about that. Bill Self still has some figuring out to do on this Kansas team, even though it is late in the season. But, man, they can make a run. They really can. They play Texas at Texas March 4th, the last game of the season. So that'll be another big one. The latest top 25 matchup on Saturday came between St. Mary's and Gonzaga. Man, what a crazy game this was. This game went into overtime. St. Mary's pulled the upset by 8 over the number 12 Gonzaga Bulldogs. And Aiden Mahaney, the freshman for St. Mary's, the freshman point guard, he is everything he's cracked up to be. All the hype around him is warranted. Didn't shoot the three ball well this game, but he had 18 points, 3 assists, and he's just a game manager, man. Had some huge shots down the stretch. Also, Gonzaga doesn't really have that great of a point guard this year. These past 2 years have had Jalen Suggs and then Nembhard last season. But this year, Strother hasn't stepped up to being that. Hunter Salas hasn't as well. Drew Timmy's still the same Drew Timmy. But defensively, this team just doesn't match up as good as previous years. But that's okay. They're still a top 15 team in the nation, even without that. The last time Gonzaga hasn't won this conference or tied for first place in this conference was 2012. I think so. So this will be 11 years later. And St. Mary's is up 2 games right now, with not so long left in conference play. So it would be awesome for St. Mary's to win this conference, and they are a scary team, especially when tournament play comes. In the ACC, Miami got a huge win over Clemson on Saturday, 78-74. Nigel Pack added 20 for Miami. Miami is just 1 game behind first place in the ACC. They are playing Duke right now and currently up 12 early in the first half. But Duke is only a half game behind Miami. So the ACC is insanely close. You got 6 teams all within a game and a half of each other. So who knows what's going to happen in that conference. Clemson, on the other hand, they have North Carolina coming up February 11th. And then they have Florida State, Louisville, Syracuse, winnable games, obviously. Then they have NC State and Virginia back-to-back. The ACC is still up for grabs. It'll be really fun to see what happens in that conference. Staying in the ACC, how could I forget the biggest rivalry in college basketball, maybe in all of sports, Duke versus North Carolina. Duke got a 6-point win over North Carolina at Cameron Indoor. These 2 teams are not ranked. How crazy is that? North Carolina started off number 1 this season, and then Duke, I believe, started top 5 as well. But Duke's starting to get it together, man. North Carolina was starting to get it together, and then they lost to Pittsburgh, and then they also lost this game as well. But a huge win for Duke. Huge win for Duke. And Derek Lively, one of the top prospects coming into the season. I don't want to say disappointing, but, man, he has been underwhelming. I'll say that, underwhelming. But he had a huge game, his best career game so far. 4 points, 14 rebounds, 8 blocks. Wasn't allowing Armando Bacot to do anything. I'll get to that later. But also Jeremy Roach, one of my favorite point guards to watch in college basketball, probably because of what he did to Arkansas last year. It just made me fall in love with the way he was able to play make, facilitate. The mid-range shot is Chris Paul-like. So huge game for him, huge game for Kyle Filipowski as well. He had 14. So huge game for Duke. On the other side, Armando Bacot didn't shoot a shot the last 12 minutes of this ball game. The All-American, North Carolina's best player, R.J. Davis and Caleb Love, who probably do not believe that he is their best player. The way they get him the ball is just, it's horrible. I was listening to the Field of 68's podcast today, and they said that Hubert Davis needs to put them 2 in a church, because what he needs to say to them after the game is just, it's not godly-like. So, really wild game, man. 5 for 16 for R.J. Davis, 5 for 15 for Caleb Love. Armando Bacot shoots 50%, 6 of 12 field goals. They just have to give the ball to him. North Carolina is one of the most frustrating teams to watch, because it's just Caleb Love and R.J. Davis jacking up shots. They had an incredible run last season in March Madness, leading them all the way to the national championship game, and they should have won the national championship. But yeah, it just can be so infuriating to watch. Hubert Davis just got to get in control, or this team could go downhill quick. They might not even make the tournament the way it's looking, but we'll see. The last team I'm going to talk about is my favorite team, the Arkansas Razorbacks. So if you don't want to hear about Arkansas, just leave the video now. I appreciate y'all for watching. Probably not going to miss anything. But Arkansas, we got our first road win of the season. It's a shame that it took this long, but we got it. We got it over a really bad South Carolina team in a really infuriating fashion. I can't believe that we let South Carolina in this ball game and gave them so many chances to beat us. We were up this whole game. Then in the last 5-6 minutes, we allowed them to take 4 or 5 1-point leads, and then we would score, and then they would score again. So it was very nerve-wracking to watch. We let a nobody, I don't even know this guy's name. Never heard of him. Josh Gray had 20 points, and I believe he had a double-double on us. They also have Gregory Jackson, who probably will be a first-round pick, if not a lottery pick, but I don't know if he'll go that high. And he can knock down some shots, man. Haven't watched him all year just because I really haven't tuned into South Carolina games. But they proved to me that I probably should now. Jalen Graham came up big, 16 points, 80% from the field. And Anthony Black had a huge layup down the stretch. Devontae Davis, he can be so fun to watch, and then he can just piss you off in an instant. But I love Devontae Davis, and so glad we got this win. We got a big win over Texas A&M on Tuesday, and then we beat South Carolina, and then we have Kentucky coming. We go to Kentucky on Tuesday. Late in the season, we have Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky, all 3 in a row. So that's going to be a tough stretch, and we'll see what we're made of. But I hope y'all enjoyed the video. So much happened this past week. I hope I covered enough of it. I know I didn't cover all of it, and I'll probably be mad at myself for missing some things, but I appreciate y'all watching, and I can't wait for the next week of college basketball. But I am out.